I'm going to take you to a much bigger retail brand. Okay, it's billions of dollars in GMV, much bigger use case. Let's cover this template a little bit, and I'll tell you how you'll use it. I don't know how many of you guys are going to end up wanting to use the tools, but you'll go to data management, data onboarding, and there is all these data sets you can upload and the standard formats for these data sets. You'll download the standard formats, grab data from wherever, and then upload it to this data onboarding sheet. Sorry, the console. And then you can go to Triangulation tool. You can then create a new study, and then you can grab all the data sets from here, and then, whatever, and then you can generate the study. When you generate the study, it'll look like this. So I'm going to walk through that, okay? And by the way, if you want to use this, let Alphonse know, and we will set you up with the access. We probably have to train you for about at least one session before you feel comfortable using this. Okay, so now this is let's do a quick setup. Big retail brand, several billion dollars worth of GMV. They spend hundreds of millions of dollars worth of media. And they're clearly a candidate for the 3P&L model. So this is the 3P&L model. We have acquisition, retention, and reactivation. So, new customers, active customers, win-back customers, right? 3 different P&Ls. We're going to walk through what a real-life use case looks like, okay? Okay, so let's start here. So in this case, there's about what? $3 billion worth of revenues is fourth quarter data, $3 billion worth of revenue, 27 million orders in this particular time. If you look at new, about $79 million worth of new customer order revenue, 1.1 million new customers acquired in this particular time. So a fairly big brand, okay? So let's start with acquisition. So you can see the acquisition is a small portion of the overall business. If you remember, when you looked at, for example, the Perfect Gene or any of the smaller DTC brands, about 50-50, 70-40, like majority of the revenue will be acquisition revenue. Maybe half the revenue, maybe 20%, 30%, 40% of the revenue will be retention revenue. Whereas when you work with a bigger brand, it'll obviously look different. Naturally, much bigger portion of the revenue is active customer revenue. A much smaller portion of the revenue is new customer revenue, and usually equivalent portion of the revenue will be reactivated revenue, okay? Churn customer revenue, okay? Win backs, okay? All right, so in this particular case, we're looking at acquisition. Acquisition, they're spending about $45 million in acquisition in a quarter. And the spend is across all of these different channels. You can see they are spending about $3 million on YouTube. They have app spend, about UAC spend about $4 million. Non-brand shopping, non-branded search, non-branded search. It's kind of a full funnel portfolio, right? TV, a ton of money on TV, a ton of money on OTT and stuff like that. Okay, so this is their current spend mix, which is kind of obviously a big portfolio of spend investments. Okay. All right. Now they have UTM tracking, like a lot of these people. They have a lot of the big brands have invested heavily in UTM tracking. So they believe their UTM reported revenue in a big way. So this is the UTM revenue that's tracked. And the nice thing about UTM is they can match the UTM revenue in the back end, and they can break out the orders into new customer orders, active customer orders, win back customer orders, and stuff like that. They can do that. So they've done that here. So that's here. This is total UTM revenue. This is the UTM revenue specifically for acquisition. Okay, so if you take affiliates, for example, $29 total million attributed to affiliate, only about $2.19 million that actually attributed to new customers coming out of affiliate. Okay. Now, if you can see, there's a bunch of blanks here. Okay. Now, a lot of times we get challenged. I mean, as practitioners, we are used to this kind of data sparsity issue, which is we had access to UTM data, but when we looked at the platform data, which in this particular case was Impact, I think. Impact was affiliate reporting. It was a mess. We couldn't pull out anything out of Impact. Okay, so we said, okay, we're not able to get any Impact platform data. We're just going to keep it blank. But we got some data from Google Display and Facebook, and this was, I believe, Bliss Point or something like that. So we have sparse data. Okay, this is one of the big one challenge that I'm sure you're not surprised by, but a lot of challenges around having data that is complete. You're never going to have complete data. It's challenges. You want to use the data we have and put together triangulation analysis. Okay. UTM revenue, platform revenue. They had already run a bunch of tests. We came in, run a bunch of tests for them. So this is all the incrementality multipliers. So incrementality attributed revenue, MMM attributed revenue, right? So after we have done all these studies, this is what the world looks like for acquisition. Okay. Now, if you scroll to the right a little bit, this is a contribution. Okay. In this particular case, where is my contribution numbers here? Okay. So if you see, for example, acquisition, very small contribution. The UTM contributes 1.6%, very small portion, whereas incrementality is saying, actually, you know what? It's a fairly strong contribution of 39%. is even stronger. So this was a big challenge for them. Like, say, hey, you know what? When we run the it's coming out to be much stronger, but incrementality is not as strong. Which ones to believe in? And on a platform on a channel by channel basis. A big part of that was trying to help them understand that. So if you end up doing triangulation, what you'll end up taking all these data sets, putting it together to create the base attribution data set, then either applying benchmark multipliers that M squared has, or you will get multipliers from a test or an MMM study. You will use that over here and once you put it in, the rest of it will fill out. You will end up getting ROAS numbers or CPA numbers here. All the different ROI numbers will end up over here. And if I go here, this is the contribution. Okay. Now the way I read this when I look at this is that I start here. This is acquisition. So I'm looking at what is my CAC. My actual CAC is 43.1. And what is my MER? MER is 1.8. Okay. How many of you guys, these words CAC and MER are familiar? Should I talk about that a little bit? Can somebody?
The only one I'm not very familiar with is MER.
MER is the revenue version of CAC, Neil. So CAC is total customers divided by spend, right? So if you, instead of using total number of customers, you revenue, it's like a ROAS. It's like a ROAS number, except it is total new customer revenue divided by total new customer spend.
Okay.
Okay, CAC is the opposite. CAC is total new customer spend divided by total customers you brought in, or the cost of acquiring one customer. If you think of it in revenue terms, what is the total new customer revenue divided by total spend? That's MER. Okay, I mean it's some brands are used to looking at MER as opposed to CAC. So we present both in this particular case. But you also, if you are working with a particular brand, I would show less numbers if possible. Meaning that if it turns out that they are used to looking at CAC, then hide the MER, then make everything CPA based analysis. So you're not showing all this data, right? So you're trying to figure out which of these. In fact, Shivank is a product manager. He's got a selections page here. You can hide and unhide certain things. You can say, I'm really a CPA client. So you can make it all about CPA and hide the revenue numbers. Or you can say, really a ROAS kind of a use case. So you can flip it. So make it, there's a wall of numbers. And as practitioners, it's our job to interpret this wall of numbers, pick out the insights from this and weave a story and do data storytelling based on that. But we want to make it as simple for the folks who are consuming this as possible. Executives, if I throw it at them, they'll be like, dude, I don't want to talk to you ever, right? It's our job to help kind of turn this into stories that are accessible. Okay. All right. What am I looking for when I'm looking at this? I'm looking at this number, 1.8. Okay, 1.8 is the total MER that includes the baseline, right? It does not. It's assumed that all the revenue that was acquired was incremental revenue that came because of media, and divided by the cost, I get 1.8. But I would look at these two numbers over here. Okay, this number over here tells me that it's 0.7. Incremental ROAS is 0.7 according to incrementality, is 1.2 according to MMM. So clearly there's a baseline to the business, okay? And what's the baseline? Which is about 70%. According to incrementality is about 60%. According to MMM is about 40%, right? It's a big difference, 60 and 40%, huge difference, right? One of the big challenges for a brand that's spending $45 million a quarter, for them to have such a big variance in attribution from two approaches is pretty jarring for them. And part of our job is to help understand where it's well aligned, where it's not well aligned, where you need to test, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is one start here. Then you go into final. This is the final. You pick where do I have the most confidence on this particular channel. I like incrementality because I ran tests. Here, I never ran a test. The only thing I have is an MMM. So I'm going to use MMM estimate, right? You pick and choose which advanced attribution method you have confidence in, or which is the only advanced attribution method you have to rely on. The beautiful thing about MMMs here is that it'll give you an estimate for all the channels, or you can at least try and get an estimate for all channels. Whereas incrementality, it's not possible to test all channels, right? You can have to pick and choose the channels you test into. So you might end up with a lot of MMMs initially and then have incrementality in patches. Over a period of time, you do more and more testing, you have more and more confidence, and you use more incrementality multipliers, which is part of the practice, helping people identify which ones to use because you're more confidence in something and less confidence in something is part of the judgment that goes on top, or the expert judgment that goes on top of all the measurement we do. Then finally, this is the reporting metric for acquisition, right? You can, in fact, if I'm talking to execs, I'll hide everything else, or I'll pull this out into its own sheet and say, this is the final report, gentlemen, right? This is the last touch revenue, advanced attribution revenue, last touch ROAS, advanced attribution ROAS, and this is basically the report card for that I'll take back to executives. Okay, this is for acquisition. So as usually what you will find is that majority of the spend is going to new customer acquisition. Okay, in this particular case, if I go to retention, the retention spend is, in fact, in this case is fairly strong, but there's not a lot of media here. If you look at, in this particular case, it was a very interesting case for us, because if you look at the promo spend is $9 million out of 45, which is about 21% of total spend for acquisition, right? And 80% of this media spend was media. But if I go to retention, you'll find that out of the $27 million in spend, almost all of it is promo here. Okay, none of the media was meant for acquisition. All the media here is meant for driving new customer acquisition, and only email and promo is meant for driving existing customers. Okay, so this allows you to understand, break down the reporting. What media was meant for driving one P&L. Okay, and here you can report halos. All of these are halos. What do I mean by halo is that, like, this is a big challenge where they will pull their hair out when you work with, for example, TV, or let's say Facebook is a good example, right? Facebook, if you look at the UTM attribution, there's about $2 million of Facebook revenue on existing customers. If I go here on Facebook, there's about 395,000. Okay, so what they'll do is they look at this revenue that comes out of UTM attribution, about $5 million. And they'll be like, I deployed Facebook for driving new customer acquisition, but I'm basically driving all existing customers. Facebook is useless. And everybody will be like, this is a kind of a BS. We should kill the whole Facebook program. And this goes for everything that is upper funnel, mid funnel, whatnot. Naturally, what will happen, because 85% of revenue is existing customer revenue, this is bound to happen. Now, when you break it up like this into multiple P&Ls, you can say, out of the $1.5 million, about $400,000 was new customers, and another, $1.1 million was existing customer. It is a halo. It's driving that. By the way, I have assigned no incrementality to it. I've zeroed it out. I can do an incrementality test and say, specific incrementality test on Facebook prospecting, driving retention, and I can come back with a number here. It may be 5%, it may be 10%, whatever it is. But this allows you to do the accounting for it. This approach allows you to do marketing accounting and understand what is the halo effect of prospecting media driving existing customers, right? And allows you to say, hey, let's just zero it out for now. I'm starting this out. We haven't done any tests. I haven't done an MM specifically for it. Let's zero it out so that now we can, account for it in the most highest integrity way possible. And you can look at the value of this media in this particular way. Okay. So same thing for reactivation. You'll see that a very small amount of spend, only promo spend, really don't have anything else outside of that going to reactivation. The beauty is you can bring it all together. Now, summary triangulation brings the same spend. Now you have this is the spend they know they spent. Okay, their total spend is $84 million in a quarter across all the different P&Ls, including promo, right? One of the big wins here is also bringing media spend and promo spend together. When we work together, when we work in the industry, media works in its own corner, promo works in its own corner. Almost nobody brings it together. The only person who brings it together is the CFO. That's why the CFO is always upset with the marketers, because, hey, you guys are all spending media over there. Meanwhile, somebody told me I have to give promo dollars to my customers. I'm giving free shipping. I'm giving first order free. I'm giving whatever free. And all of that's coming out of my pocket. None of you guys are accounting for it, and we're losing money hand over fist. And I hate you guys because nobody wants to talk about it, right? Now, this allows us to bring those two things together, put it side by side, and say, including promo dollars, we spent $84 million. And it kind of breaks out and say, out of the $84 million, almost half is promo, but 60% is promo here, right? What is the amount of the breakout of media spend and promo spend? And then this is the last touch revenue. This is the total AA revenue, which is the advanced attribution revenue, all three P&Ls combined together. What is the actual ROAS? Now look at the ROAS here, right? If you look at the acquisition ROAS, the MER was 1.8, right? The actual ROAS is 0.1 or something like that here. If you look at 0.7 or 1.0, when you roll it all up, what is the media's impact on all of the P&Ls together? Now you can look at the ROAS 4.5, which is not bad, right? For incrementally, for your dollars worth of media you spend, it's driving $4.5 in value, including the halo effects. So it rolls up all the halo effects and provides one number for you to look at, right? And this tells you where it's driving the revenue. If you look at, let's say, Facebook here. Now, Facebook's really was meant for driving acquisition. It's mostly driving retention, right? You can kind of like break it out and say, where is it driving the value? You can kind of like break it out and hold this. Now, this allows you to do what's called opportunity analysis. Okay, you can now say, hey, if I looked at Apple search ROAS is, where's my ROAS? Here, Apple search was 8.3. My overall ROAS is 4.5. It's really, really great. I think it's non-brand search in Apple is really great. Let's triple the spend. If I triple the spend, I expect diminishing returns. I'm saying 30% could be more. What is my incremental contribution I'll drive? And I can do that across multiple channels and say I can drive an additional 2% top line growth by increasing spend in this particular way. I can also do the same thing and cut some spend in some other channels and make it budget neutral and show how I would like scale the overall business by reallocating among the channels that are less efficient, more efficient, and drive growth. I should work on this particular part more for the demo and kind of show you where I would cut dollars as well. I think we ran out of time to put this demo use case together for us. Okay, let me pause. Obviously, I can spend another 3 days talking about this, but before I do that, questions.
Just a quick question. If I remember correctly, if the platform individually rolled up represents a greater percentage of revenue than Google, this output, is it normalizing all the revenue?
It's true, absolutely true. If I show you here, for example, actually, in this particular case, there's a bunch of data sets missing. We couldn't get access to like Apple's platform reporting, impact platform reporting, ad role platform reporting, and a bunch of other AdWords data sets had tracking that was broken or we could not reconcile the tracking. So we couldn't pull all the platform data sets. Yeah? This is very common, by the way. So you're right. I couldn't make the case that platform over reports. It was not a case I could make effectively because of that. Right. But if I did, almost certainly that'll be true. All the platforms will claim a ton of revenue. That's not true. That's not incremental, and they'll all stack up on each other. And it'll be 300%, 200% of total revenue. We can expect that to be true.
I guess what I'm asking is, that makes sense, but what is your table of truth then when you're reporting out? Are you using their numbers as part, the client's numbers, my numbers, as one of the outputs so that you can compare UTM?
Yes. You got the great question you asked. The way at least in this.
Otherwise, you might end up with 3 models that show 3 different revenues that don't
match with each. Okay, here. So here, what I do is I pick something called LT anchor. You see this? So depending on, I want to pick either UTM or platform, depending on, in some cases, UTM is not like TV, for example. UTM will pick up nothing, right? It won't pick up anything. So I'll go to Bliss Point numbers or Roku numbers or whatever it is and use their numbers as last touch because I have some last touch to report against. UTM is showing 0 conversions for TV. So what do? I got to use some last touch number. I may use an iSpot number, or I might use a Roku number or whatnot. So I can pick the LT anchor over here. When I pick the LT anchor, it is going to report that last touch here. And then in the summary, all of that gets normalized. Okay, this LT revenue is now pulled from multiple heterogeneous sources. Some are UTM, some are iSpot or AdWords or whatever it is, and it kind of lines it all up. And this is my advanced attribution revenue. Again, most of it was incrementality, some of it was MMM, again, all blended. This makes the point you're making, okay? Which is, what is my last touch? What is my advanced attribution? What is my multiplier as a result of it against the two? And last touch ROAS, advanced attribution ROAS allows you to do the same things I taught in class yesterday. Okay. Let me pause there. And am I answering your question?
I think so. Just to make sure, back to the CFO, if he's looking at his financials and he's showing 2 million in revenue, but I've got a platform that shows me 2.4 million in revenue, and I've got, or UTM at 2.4 and platform at 1.3. So I'm doing these projections based on a certain revenue number.
This is the number he'll project based on. So those numbers, one of the biggest gripe that he has with us is that these are all like squishy numbers. This make no sense for me. But this is the non-squishy hard numbers that line up to finance. I've now estimated what the non-squishy financial number is, and I roll it up to him and say, here is my portfolio, guys, okay? We drove, the total revenue for the quarter was $3 billion. I am saying that 13% was incremental. So about $383 million was actually driven because of media. We spent $84 million. So actually we returned $4 for every dollar you gave me. Hey, CMO is going to go back and the CFO, you gave me $84 million, including promo dollars and media dollars. I returned back $4.5 for every dollar you gave me. So give me another 20, give me another 40. I'll give you probably not 4.5, I'll give you 3.5, I'll give you 2.5, right? This is basically he can break it up and say, here is new customer growth, here is retention growth, and here is reactivation growth and whatnot. And if you take this accounting framework, you can replace this with Dave Lokes' accounting framework, right? It can be add margin, add contribution margin, add all the shipping spend and freight spend and all that stuff. You can have a full P&L represented here. It's a fun question. The question as consultants for us, how deep do we go? We can go all the way to where Dave Lokes went. We can stop somewhere before, depending on the audiences that we are talking to. Okay?
Thank you.
Jim, go for it.
Yeah, Uro, I have a couple of questions, but I don't want to derail us. So the first question is on, we have the three different P&Ls, the acquisition, retention, reactivation. The models that you're building for each of those, are you assuming, or do you find that companies have separate campaigns for reactivation, separate campaigns for acquisition, separate campaigns for churn, and then you're basically building different models using those different media sources? Or are you just changing your dependent variable for each of those models to be new customers, returning customers, churn customers?
More the latter, which is you're trying to use all the media, and then you are trying to figure out what is the impact of the media in driving the actual media mix models, if that's what you're thinking about. The media mix models are going to have three separate models in this particular case, one for activation, one for retention, one for reactivation. All the media spend, and the dependent variable is those P&Ls. And then you see how much they drive, okay? Now, in the accounting model, when I bring it back, what I do is that if you go to retention triangulation, I think, look at this MMM revenue. See this? The MMM has decomposed revenue, but I'm not assigning any costs here because it wasn't meant to drive reactive or retention in this particular case, right? From an accounting perspective, I'm going to load the cost wherever it was meant to be loaded, but then I'll roll it up here in summary and say, okay, these are the actual costs wherever it was meant for. And here is the sum of impact across the three P&Ls. So I'm actually like breaking it out separately and then bringing it back together. And the total, impact on profitability, ROAS, whatever it is, across all the P&Ls. And here is the impact, how much impact it had on one P&L versus the other, and breaking it out. So it kind of gives a nice way for you to report all the channels where it was meant to create impact, where it's creating impact, what's the total ROAS, and all that stuff in a clean way, right?
Perfect.
Now, yeah, it's a lot of numbers, and one of the big challenges and opportunities, I would say, is that there is a ton of stories. Every time I do this, it is incredibly revealing to the business, right? We have a really good understanding of how media drives businesses, and our models can really open up a ton of growth opportunities when it does that. But it requires a consultant. It requires folks like you and Erin and Terry to unpack this and make this real for folks. if I give the sheet as is to a CFO or a CMO, they'll be like, just disappear from the planet. I don't want to talk to you, right? Because it's not they don't want to like go through some big wall of numbers that somebody made. But that's why there's opportunity for us to data story tell around this and say what the opportunities are. Then it becomes super exciting. Then they'll be like, wow, this approach is freaking powerful. Do more of it for me. Stick around, help me kind of turn this into a program that where the opportunity is, create this into a data-driven growth program, test, learn, grow program. That usually what happens now, it's that's the program takes a while to build and sort of actualize. So now you have a multi-year roadmap to kind of put this and make this into a real reality for those brands, and that's how we earn a paycheck, right? By creating value, and this is a repeatable framework for us to do that.